Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Inspire Writing class today with Mont Blanc. This is also an Italic handwriting class and series because we are going to be focusing on the element of kind of our everyday use of this beautiful script. There are gorgeous forms of Italic calligraphy, and we will delve into that in part 3 of this series. But for the first two parts, part 1 and part 2 of this series, we're going to really hone in on we're learning a beautiful, legible, fun, kind of edgy looking, but unique script that we can use in our everyday lives, whether that is the print form that we are going to be going over today, or a fun, connected, a little bit faster to write cursive form, which we will learn in part 2. Here you've got a sample with, this would be that broad edge, what we're going to do in part 3, where we've got the thicker kind of calligraphy look. And this section down here where it says Italic Handwriting is the style that we're going to be learning in part 1 of this class. I also want to show you, I always do these poems a little bit differently in the style that we're learning, and to show you where we are going with this. So here's part 1, here's part 2. They are essentially the same letter forms, but in part 2, when we write with cursive, we will have these fun little connections to be able to connect our letters. This is one of my favorite characteristics about the Italic handwriting series, is that Italic, you learn, actually, let me show you this on this other page here. We can explain a little bit better. Raise your hand or let me know in the chat if either of these two styles look familiar to you. Danielian is one that was taught in some of the schools that I grew up in. It's considered a kind of pre-cursive style. So this is the print style, and this would be the cursive form. You can see they're very similar in the A, but for the B, they're a little bit different here. Pre-cursive because you'll see, as in the D here, it's kind of got that little curve on the bottom, like it's ready to connect into another letter, even though that one wouldn't necessarily connect, okay? Or there's Zahner Bloser. I also got to learn this in, I think my 2nd grade teacher was using this style. So the Zahner Bloser, this is also called ball and stick. And that is because if you look at this A, it's like you did the ball and then you did the stick, or the stick and then the ball for the B. Same with the D here, right? Very round forms, and then the sticks, which did not turn into a connected stroke easily. So you would learn to print, and then if you were lucky in 3rd grade, you'd get to learn a completely new style of the letter and learn its cursive form. So this is a guide for you. Mark it up. And what I'll point out today, some things that you might want to mark up as we are going, is things like, oh, when I look at this A, even though overall you look at it, you think, oh my goodness, that looks so basic. Well, there are a few things that we are going to be making sure to point out to our eyes. The top of this A looks, oh, that's kind of flat. And the base of this B, that's pretty flat too. In fact, we're going to see that same characteristic of these kind of flat angular tops to the D, the G, and a flatter base to the P. Here's the top. The Q is pretty flat there. And there's going to be some other things that we'll be pointing out as well. I have these slightly dotted lines behind you that shows the slant for this letter form. And Italic, I will also point out, because I don't think I mentioned it elsewhere in our book, the sizing here. So between, this is our baseline where our letters are resting, and this is our waistline or our header. This is called our X height, the size of most of our lowercase letters. The capitals and the ascenders are going to be like, they're going to go up about half of that space. So it's going to be 1.5 the size of our lowercase. Okay, so if you're used to writing with your lowercase about half the size of your capitals, think about increasing the size of that lowercase just a bit. Onto this page. So the perks of the writing systems, I've already alluded to this quite a few times, so I don't want to beat the dead horse, but you can see here the difference between the printed version and the cursive. If I show you an oversimplified example, it would be, and again, contrast the Italic form with our ball and stick. So we are going to be learning this ellipse form where we've got that flatter top in kind of a, oops, I overdid that one. Let me go back to my medium nib. Flat top, curve, up and around and down, okay? So to help us learn this ellipse form that we're going to be either doing with the flat top or the flat base, this is my favorite visual. Yes, it is a makeup sponge, but it is almost a perfect shape, okay? So sorry, gentlemen, where this visual might not be quite as helpful, but the ladies, if you've got one of these at home, every time you see one, you'll think of the italic shape from here on out, where we've got kind of that flat top, and it's not a sharp edge. Imagine you kind of took your sandpaper and you sanded off that edge, and it's got this gentle curve, and then this is probably a little bit too sharp of an edge, but it's going to have this flatter side here, okay, coming up where it meets into that back stem. Our makeup sponge is our ellipse shape that we are going to be thinking of, okay? Hopefully this is helpful for you. But we are going to be doing them in one stroke. So we're going to do that ellipse shape and then straight down, one stroke, instead of going 1, 2, like you would with some of the other forms of letters, okay? We already talked about that slight slant that we're going to be making. And then in key with that ellipse shape is this branching line. If you see right here where that upturn of our ellipse meets the stem, it happens to be right around the midpoint of the letter. So if you guys happen to have taken the architectural lettering with me, and we did some of these like a letter N if it was lowercase, see how this branches all the way from the bottom? I don't know, I need to zoom in a little bit more for you. We don't want that. So when I do the lowercase n, I'm going to come and I'll branch right around the middle point here for our letters. 2 quick tips for easing pen grip pain is hold your pen nice and lightly. See, I've got this kind of circular shape here. We're not death gripping. And I say that as a reminder to myself too, because sometimes I really want to have so much control that my thumb and this knuckle start to hurt. So we are opening the grip so that in theory, if we were riding away in some beautiful Parisian cafe and someone walked up behind us and snagged that pen out of our hand, they actually would be successful with that because we're not death gripping our pen. These first 2, though I said we try for 1-stroke letters, the I and the J obviously are going to be 2-stroke because we have to dot these strokes. And they are just going to be nice and straight with a little dot on the top. As far as how far down that J goes, let me zoom in just a tad more if I can. There we go. They're not going to go all the way down here. So this space here, these are equal distance spaces. So think of that J just going a little bit below that baseline, kind of halfway between those 2 lines. So typically less long than you typically would for, maybe we're used to going nice and long with those J's, making those descenders and the ascenders shorter. Chop this guy off, okay? I meant to update this handout and apparently did not. So same for the ascenders. Those are going to go up, like I said, with the capitals, about half that's distance of the X height there. Okay, nice straight lines. Go ahead and write the name Jill here. For our J's, you'll notice what I did not do is really hook it there. It's kind of got this flatness to it. And that flatness we're going to see, like I mentioned, in the A and the B and the P. We're going to see it in the J here. We'll actually see it in the R as well. So this is another way we kind of keep these characteristics of the letter forms reflecting across all the different letters. Okay. We will talk about spacing on our last page here. But since these are all straight lines, our vertical lines, this is going to be the widest space that we have between any of our letters. So we don't need to be like, oops, sorry, that was too long. We're not overdoing it, but neither do we want them to be super tight to one another, okay? So just think of a nice even spacing between that. No. Yes, you can see even there I'm slanting more than that 5 degrees because that's what I'm used to. So Chantelle's, follow the slant lines. That's group 1. Group 2 is our diagonal groups. We've got some of these diagonal strokes in them. K is another one of our 2-strokers. So I'll go down below here to demonstrate that. So vertical line meeting right in the middle of that stroke and out. So it's just 1 and 2. The V, when I write V's normally, I actually do that as a 2-stroke myself. So I'm going to prepare myself for a cursive form, and I'm going to do that as 1 stroke. Down and up. Same with the W. Down, up, okay? Because when we turn that into cursive, down, up, and then we're going to connect over into one of our other letters. It's just ready to go. You've got that, your pen up at the top of that stroke there, okay? The X gets special attention because I would bet, you know, some serious money that nobody regularly would go top to bottom, bottom to top with that X. But that is what we are going to practice with these X's, was we're going to go stroke 1 and then bottom to top. The reason for that is if I was going to turn this into the word wax, here's my tail. There's that first stroke of the X, and the second stroke of the X comes here. If I wanted to write waxing, okay, the reason we were paying attention to the stroke sequence is so that it makes us ready to change this into cursive, okay? So pay attention to that second stroke is starting from the bottom up. Z is pretty straightforward, probably what most of us are already doing for our Z's, okay? And for our crossbar group, the F and the T, the F is going to start up here at the top and come down. It kind of has a slightly flattened top to it. It's not, you know, like that, but I think of this as more like this wide umbrella that's coming over the top. And then that crossbar, it's not this. It is slightly on the left, but it's going to pull further to the right to kind of line up with that upper curve there. Okay, so the F is the same height as most of our capitals and our centers. The T, however, likes to do its own little thing, and it is just barely above that header line. Okay, so T is short. We naturally are going to cross the crossbar as a second stroke there, but this is another one of those places where when we are going to turn this into cursive, we actually connect from the crossbar. Okay, that one to me took a little getting used to the idea of the crossbar being the connecting stroke. Same for the T actually. So that's why that is stroke number 2. These 2 groups here, the arch group and the ellipse group, are probably the most important for getting the unique italic look to our handwriting. So it doesn't just look like any other regular print handwriting style. Okay. So with our arch group, what we are paying attention to are those branching strokes. If you printed it out in color or maybe even in black and white, you can kind of see there's a very faint line that I put there at the halfway mark. So we can kind of, as we're practicing, think about, okay, I'm retracing back up and branching at the middle. Okay, these are all done in 1 stroke. So branching at the middle, down, branching up at the middle. Okay, so I'll do that down below here. That's where I'm coming out. What I am not doing is coming right from the bottom. Okay, that would be more like our architectural writing where it's branching right from the bottom. Here we're trying to branch at the middle. Same with the R here. R is one that has that kind of slightly flattened top to it. So it is not like that. I'm going to kind of flatten that top a little bit. And so these are branching up and out. For the U and the Y, it's a little bit trickier to control where that branch line is going to meet. I'm going to do this extra large here. So when I do that U, and I want it to kind of connect right there in the middle, the way that you control that is how angled this is. If I super duper make this a tight angle, then it's going to be branching all the way up from the top. If I make this really, really wide, really, really round, chances are it's going to lower that branching point. So kind of finding that right balance of just how angled this curve is so that that branch line would be right in the middle. Okay, does that make sense? Kind of a visual there for you. All right, we can practice with a few words here, and you can do runny or perhaps tummy, whichever word you like to practice here. that flattened R. We're going to talk about, as you are learning a new style, you can go slow enough that you have these little mental cues that you tell yourself. And then once your hand gets used to that motion, then you can go a little bit faster. But as I'm writing here, I might think, okay, T, I'm going to go just above the header, pull that crossbar a little bit further. And then, oh, got to think about that branch line for the U, and branching in the middle for the M, branching in the middle for the M, straight line down, branch in the middle, retrace, branch in the middle, and that right angle there. And then underneath, I'm not going to go down too far. Okay, so that's for our branching arch group. Now back to our beautiful ellipse group that is going to make or break something looking italic, especially when it comes to adding, when we get to doing kind of the calligraphic form with the broad edge pen. Okay, so here's kind of an over exaggerated form of this ellipse, where it's got that flat top and this curved side. And if we flip it upside down for the B and the P, this is what it looks like. So the flat part is on the bottom, versus flat part on top. When I was training my hand to do this, I will admit that I over exaggerate. In fact, sometimes still do, because I think it kind of looks cool. Let me show you down the top. I would almost sharpen those edges, right? Like kind of make it too flat, like that, okay? And with the idea that over time, I would kind of learn how to soften those edges. Can remember, sandpaper off those edges, soften them out. If you need to do that, by all means, you have permission. If you want to train yourself from the get-go to do it correctly, then I would recommend just going a little bit more slowly as you practice this letter form, okay? So here's some A's for you. Remember, flat top, straight back. When we come to adding the cursive form, we're just going to add little serifs to that in our next class. Makes it pretty easy. These are all done in one stroke. The D is one of our exception letters where we're not starting at the top and coming back around like that. We are actually starting right here in the middle. So it's basically like you're going to do that A form again, but you go up and down. The G starts like that A form as well, that goes into the descender space. The Q also starts like that A form into the descender space. It has a little tick mark there. The B is one stroke, starting from the top, retracing that branch line comes out, and that flat base to it. Okay, so really think about the key things for the B is branching in the middle and that flat base to it, okay? It's that same flat base that we have for the P, branching in the middle, round, and flat base, okay? So write the word bag, if you will, if you've got space, you have it written all over your forms like I have. Branch from the middle, down, flat base, flat top, around. Hopefully you've got a nice middle branch there, and like so. If you look at just this word bag versus a ball and stick version, which maybe looks like this. Onto this last group here, this oval group. Our O's do not have flat tops to them. We do not want flat tops O's, so we're going to do a nice oval form. Our E's, like the D's, are breaking our rules here, so they start here in the middle and come around. When we do the cursive form, some people do it as a two-stroke, like that. I, 95% of the time, will always do this as just one single stroke that starts in the middle. The C's and the S's do have slightly flattened strokes to them. And that comes particularly helpful when we are doing the cursive form of the S. We kind of chop off part of this, and we're just going to do that part of the S. Or some people have this kind of flat top still a little bit that comes out, okay? So if you've ever seen this form of an S in cursive, I never really realized, like, oh, that is kind of actually a normal S. It's just had some surgery done. Okay, kind of a fun way to think about it. When it comes to spacing, we talked about with that word Jill at the beginning, you're gonna have the widest space between straight downstrokes. So we've got, back to the word Jill, that was a good example. All these straight strokes, that's gonna be the biggest gap that we have in here. you have a little bit less space between a straight line and a curved stroke. So here we've got the straight line of the L and the curve of the E. So we're going to reduce that space just a little bit. And we'll have the most narrow space between two curves, like in these O's, not touching, but pretty close together, or between a diagonal and a downstroke. So we've got that V and that A here. So that's going to be pretty tight between here. The reason for that is because it all comes down to what our eye sees. And with these O's, our eye is actually seeing all this space around here. So you can put the two centers of the O's pretty close together and we're still seeing all that space around it. And so visually, it will still look equally spaced like these other letters here. All right. Thank you again, everybody, for participating today. Bye.